It's back. Bigger. Better. And better. It's Black History Month, the sequel, a 28-day celebration of black exploitation films. We're moving into Amish territory from here on out. In 1988, Keenan Ivory Wayans did his own take on the Blaxploitation era with I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, a movie that was less an attempt to resurrect the genre and more of an effort to poke fun at all the ridiculousness that came along with making cheap black movies. It did an excellent job bringing many of the stars from the 70s into the modern times of the 80s. Stars like Jim Brown, Isaac Hayes, and Bernie Casey. And it was great to see them make fun of themselves and be in on the joke when it came to the shoddy production value of the movies they made. But one thing that's always going to be true about the blaxploitation of the 70s is that even though it died, it still stayed relevant in the hearts and minds of not only the actors, but the millions of fans and filmmakers all over the world. That's why every now and then, there's always some kind of film that tries to pay tribute to the fun times of the era. In the 80s, we had I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, but in the 90s, we had Original Gangstas, a 1996 film produced by Fred Williamson himself and directed by Larry Cohen, the same man who directed Black Caesar and Hell Up in Harlem. So I'd say he knows a thing or two about blaxploitation. Original Gangstas is like an Avengers or Expendables style team up of the most badass blaxploitation action heroes. Check out this list. We get Fred Williamson, of course, as John Bookman, a former football player who comes home after learning his father was shot for snitching on gang members after a murder. Then we get Pam Grier as Laurie Thompson, the mother of the boy who was murdered. And then we get Jim Brown as Jake Trevor, a former boxer and the estranged father of the boy who got shot. Even Shaft and Superfly themselves get in on the action, as both Richard Roundtree and Ron O'Neal make an appearance. Man, they were still trying to make Superfly everything but what he really was. As I mentioned earlier, Laurie's son is murdered after hustling a gang in a basketball game, and that sets off a chain of events that brings all the old school gang back together again. I say gang because in an excellent twist, it's revealed that John, Jake, and others originally started the gang that is now terrorizing the neighborhood, hence the title Original Gangstas. I've always thought that was a great reveal, because just as Jake puts it, his version of the gang was out to help the community, versus the bastardized version they have now who's out to hurt people. It gives him and his crew a purpose or a duty to put a stop to their own creation. I like that Original Gangstas feels like a merging of two genres. People might not think it, but the gang movie craze of the 90s are technically a form of black exploitation also. Whereas the 70s movies exploited pimps, guns, drugs, and women, the 90s movies exploited gang culture, fatherless homes, etc., etc. So in a way, this is a combining of two distinct blaxploitation eras, and I think they did an excellent job personally. It's the 70s versus the 90s, and neither side is perfect. The movie goes out of its way to show how the sins of the Original Gangstas, in a way, indirectly led to their current situation. Even though the blaxploitation stars are the main draw, I think the modern gang members, the rebels, match their energy flawlessly. Christopher Duncan is here as the leader Spyro, and I bet he wished he was remembered for this other than Braxton on the Jamie Foxx show. As a matter of fact, I know he does, because he mentioned recently that role kind of locked him out of opportunities. Anyway, in this movie, it's kind of hard to go back and take him seriously as Spyro, but I think he's very believable.
Once you go check out that Bookman store, the old man says he didn't rat us out, you let him alone. If he owns up to that shit, you take his ass out.
He and his gang are outright terrifying, and is written in a way to make you absolutely hate them and everybody who looks like them by the end. The movie also has a lot of other familiar faces, like the late Paul Winfield, rappers Shaheem and Drew Down, and comedian Godfrey, among others. To sum it up, Original Gangstas is a very good movie, and a lot better than it was received at the time. To be real, we were only here to see one thing, and that's our favorite black superheroes of the 70s. And in that regard, Original Gangstas doesn't disappoint. Yeah, they're a little older by this point, 20 years older to be exact, but despite that, trust me, they don't disappoint. Their time in the spotlight may be long gone, but some things are just timeless.